The Battle of Princeton ended here at Nassau Hall at now Princeton University, January 3rd, 1777. Why did the British retreat here? What was Washington's plan to capture Princeton, and how important was it anyway in the war against the British for independence? And what was Hamilton's role? Let's look at the last of America's 10 crucial days. I'm Mike, and this is Nassau Hall. This is where the British surrendered. Why is it important? And remember, we go to where events happened, right? We go to Princeton. We go, and you can see the Ivy there, right? The Ivy League. It was called the College of New Jersey back then, in the 1700s. And this building changed hands from the British to the Americans like 3 times during the Revolutionary War. This is a historic building. And I'm going to show you the top there. So what happened? Let's walk and talk here. This is one of the greats, the Battle of Princeton. And it was one of 3 battles. And Alexander Hamilton came here at the end of the Battle of Princeton. He came here at the end to get the British to surrender. And how are you going to do that? And why did they even come here? What's the point? Like, why go to this building? There are a bunch of other buildings. Take a look. I don't know if they were all here back then. There's across the street, right? But here's Nassau Hall. Why come here? The British had an outpost here. Mawhood had 1,400 men here the day before, on January 2nd. And he was marching down on January 3rd, 1777, to help out Cornwallis at the Second Battle of Trenton along Assumpink Creek, where that bridge was, and go see that video. Okay, I'll put it in the link in the description below. Alexander Hamilton comes here because the British were retreating. They were retreating. They were losing the Battle of Princeton. And how did George Washington's forces even get here? Well, that's a good question. They got here because he snuck away in the middle of the night, right? He snuck away. And, you know, that George Washington was he was smart. So he wasn't going to stick around Trenton. He was going to come because beforehand they wanted to take Princeton, right? This was one of the things they wanted to take on purpose because it was a British outpost. And we're going to go in front of it here. And so he had cannons with him, Alexander Hamilton. He had men and cannons. They were shooting. There are 3 floors. You can see 1, 2, 3. Look, count them. There you go. All the way to the top. 1, 2, 3. This is a huge stone building. It was built in 1756. This was at the time the oldest and largest stone building in the entire 13 colonies. That's how powerful it is. That's why they retreated here, the British. That's why they did it. Because they thought, oh, well, we can just hold up here for a while. Yeah, can you? Can you? Mawhood didn't think he really could. Because Mawhood, who left here, because remember, they had the outpost, but it was vacated because he was going to help Cornwallis. So he was going, and he just happened to intercept Washington's forces on the way to Trenton by Clarke's Orchard. And that's where the real fighting took place, at Clarke's Orchard. And at first we were losing that. Okay? Mercer got bayoneted 7 times and was killed. His second in command was shot twice and killed. We were not doing well at Clarke's Orchard. It was an apple orchard. I used to say New Jersey was a bunch of apple orchards. Well, it was. And Clarke's farm is a national park. This should be too. This is an administrative building now. The dean's here, right? And administrative offices are here. There are no longer classes here. But this building, it has 26-inch thick stone walls. That's why they came here. Okay? That's why they came here. They thought they could hold up until they got reinforcements. They wouldn't get reinforcements. Okay? They weren't coming. Because Alexander Hamilton and the boys had the cannons and they were firing. And they shot in 2 prayer rooms in here. And one of the rooms that they shot into a window went through, and King George's picture was in there because, of course, they got to put their king's picture in there, right? And it was knocked down, and I hope it was destroyed, but it was at least knocked down in there. So there's that, right? And but how are we going to get in? And supposedly there's a scar left on the building from one of the cannons on the west wing. Now, this is the front of the building. This may not be considered the west wing. And to be honest, we're not going to get the footage today. However, we were firing at it, and that wasn't good enough. We had to go through, you see where those lions are there? We had to go through that front door. We had to storm the door. And we did. And they waved that white flag, everybody. The British did. 194 of them surrendered to Hamilton and the boys, the Continental Army. And Washington would come here. They would come here because we won at the apple orchard, at Clarke's apple orchard, right? So we came here, and once again, just like Trenton, we didn't stay again. Can you believe it? We get all the way here. We win again at the end of the 10 crucial days from December 26th, when we crossed the Delaware and went into Trenton and beat the Hessians. Well, now we beat the British. We beat the big boys again, right? This was no joke. We finally, and that's why I think the Battle of Princeton was actually more important than the Battle of Trenton. Both were victories. And I consider the Second Battle of Trenton a victory too. I talked about that. And people argue with me with that because that was a stalemate. Yeah, it was a stalemate until we slid away in the middle of the night, right? And came, we snuck away. We were on a road that the British didn't know about. And they didn't even intercept us until 16 miles on our way to Princeton. It is pretty far. I drove it. So I'm telling you, it's pretty far. Okay. It's about 20 miles, about 18 miles, I suppose, from Trenton to here. What's the big story here? We had to leave, but we beat the British. We didn't just beat the Hessians this time. And this got the boys, and you can see the top there, to re-enlist. That was the big picture. Because the British may say, well, that's not all that important. Yeah, you don't think the ending. The ending is we could fight on forever. And that's kind of the point, isn't it? That we could fight on forever. We may not have won the war, but we showed the British we could last forever and we could beat them on the field. We beat them on the field at Clarke's orchard. We won. The way they fight in lines. So we showed we could beat the British. Also, Washington fights the battles he can win. That's the point, right? Washington fights the battles he could win. He could win this against Mawhood's 1,400 men, and he did. So that is what happened. And yeah, we had to leave, but the British had to retreat all the way to New Brunswick. They didn't come back here. We thought, oh yeah, Cornwallis would come back here and retake it. That's why George Washington didn't stay. They didn't come back here and retake it. They went up to New Brunswick. We left here, but we could kind of go on forever. Washington ended up going up to Morrisville. So that is the big picture. And this was the end of the 10 crucial days. And those men would re-enlist. And we told them, we showed them we could beat the British and we could last basically forever until we won the war for independence. That's local history for me. What's your local history? Please like, please subscribe, leave your comments below. Do you think this battle was more important than the Battle of Trenton? Let me know.